Okay, welcome everybody to our Monday call. Hopefully you can hear me all right. We've got Francis Parker here, and we're just waiting for Doug Plank, former Chicago Bear, to join the call. He might have just joined, but we're waiting for his acknowledgement if he is on the call. So, Francis, would you like to do a general introduction of your friend Doug Plank while we're waiting for him?
I don't even know where to start. Doug has so many accolades, and you have to pull it out of him because he's such a down-to-earth, humble guy who comes from very humble beginnings and has become just a superstar, not only in athletics, but also in business. And he's just a very sweet, generous soul, and just continues to, boggle my mind. He's one of these kind of guys that is a heat-seeking missile. When he was on a football field and he knew he had to tackle somebody, nothing in the world would stop him. He was one of those kind of guys. And gosh, he's just an amazing guy. And the same thing in business. Doug is all about win-win. He doesn't see anything else. Everybody's got to win, or otherwise he's not going to play. And he's just got, an amazing portfolio of things in his life. It's, just a mind blower. He's, and you got to pull it out of him because he doesn't bring it up. You have to bring it up to him. Otherwise he doesn't say anything. But anyway, what a classy gentleman. And I think, one of the things about Doug that's so great. Now, are you able to check to see if he's on, Katrina?
He may be. There's someone who's named iPhone who keeps coming and going. Let me just call him and I'll get back to you. In the meantime,
very good.
Entertain them.
Very
with
good. Let's
talk about your recent success where you met the person at the doctor's office.
Oh yeah, I'm happy to do that. Folks, this is very important for you to remember and to know. Your mind is your magnet, and I am not joking with you. Things don't happen to you, they happen for you. So when you have your mind on something and you see a future, that future is going to pull all the things to it that you're thinking about. Just an example, I went to the doctor's office to get some chelation therapy. And when I came out, and I didn't feel well that morning, and I wasn't going to go. And I ended up going anyway. And when I came out to pay, there was a nice gentleman sitting on the couch, also follically challenged. And he looked at me, I looked at him, and he nodded, and I nodded and smiled. And I said, so you're here to get some treatments too, huh? He said, yeah. He said, but I'm also a physician. I said, oh, is that right? That's neat. I said, I have a number of people in my family that are physicians, including one that is here at Health South in Sarasota. He said, who's that? I said, what's the medical director? Dr. Alexander DeJesus. And he goes, my wife works for him and she loves him. And I thought, holy moly, what a small world it is. So anyway, he went on to say that he's a different kind of physician. He's what's called a functional medicine physician. And we talked a little bit about that. I told him for well over 30 years, I've been working with a physician like himself, as well as naturopathic doctors, chiropractors, and other holistic practitioners. And I started to talk about the patch. And he was mind blown. He couldn't even believe it. So either today or tomorrow, we're going to end up having coffee. I'm going to bring him some patches. We're going to talk about it because we all know some people within a few days feel the difference, and it's absolutely incredible. It's mind-boggling. And we are so fortunate to have this wellness tool in our lives right now. So I could do a little bit of a training if it's going to be a while before Doug gets on. Did you talk to him?
Yes,
Katrina?
he's trying to get on. I've given him some instructions plus a phone number to call into. So hopefully he'll be on in a few minutes.
Super. Yeah, he'll be on in a few minutes, and you'll let me know, of course, Katrina, right? Now, I mentioned Doug Plank in the NFL was a heat-seeking missile. He was one of the smaller guys in the whole league, and yet one of the hardest hitters, because he was so focused and so concentrated in his effort. And he's taken that and been an incredible businessman because of that. We'll talk about it when he gets on the call. But, and we don't get on a call for a half hour. Usually he and I, maybe a couple times a month, 3 times a month, we'll talk for 90 minutes about the trends of the future and what's going on with business and, you know, what's going to go on with professional sports, because this COVID-19 has impacted a lot of things, including professional sports and entertainment like movies. So we always talk about future trends, and he's a very insightful gentleman. He's a very, very smart, streetwise guy. So let's just go back to that point. If you really want this to be a full-time income for you, notice I didn't say full-time job, full-time opportunity, full-time income, because the really smart people can work for 2 hours a day, pour themselves in and focus and build a massive organization. And that means you got to be very clear about who you want in your tribe. You know, I call it a tribe. We're building teams and tribes and organizations. You got to be really focused. Who is it that you want? Do I want doctors? I want some doctors, but I want people that are very enthusiastic and excited about this company LifeWave and about these patches and about the impact and the difference they're going to make to other people. So that's what I'm looking for, like Katrina and John and Kathy and Richard, very excited about what the future is, very excited about what the patches do. You know, photo light therapy is really the future of healing, or certainly one of the big pieces in healing. And that's what these patches are, photo light therapy. For those of you who don't really understand what that means, photo light, like the sun is photo light. The sun hits your skin and triggers your body to make more vitamin D3, which does a lot of things, including augment your immune system. That's why when people are sick, they go out and they get the sun, because the vitamin D3 gets created through their connection with the sun. And so basically our own energy triggers for instance, the X39 patch to make more stem cells in the body. And what are stem cells? They can become anything. They're cells that replace old, tattered, beat up cells that go into what they call cell death. So the stem cells basically replace them. So you become new every time a stem cell is born. Part of you becomes new. So that's why it's a wonderful anti-aging product, as well as, I don't want to use the word healing, but let's say regenerative product. And so,
Francis, we've got Doug on the phone.
Oh my gosh.
He's on Zoom, and he just needs to connect his audio.
Okay, very good.
And once he does that, hopefully he'll say hello. Okay. Sorry to interrupt you.
Great, great. Is he going to be on video too?
Yes, he is.
Oh, great. Okay. Katrina, as Doug comes on, you may want to read some of his accolades, because he doesn't like doing it. Do you have those in front of you?
I'll pull him up.
Is it? Okay. Doug, are you on yet?
No microphone just yet.
Okay. But he can hear us, right? Well, you're going to meet a heat-seeking missile who not only did that when he was looking for an offensive running back coming through the line to hit them and take them out, but he does that in business too. He sees what it is, he stays focused on it, and this is something you can learn from Doug Plank, to stay focused. I say be a postage stamp, stick to one thing until you get there. Stay focused. Every day, even if you have 2 hours, spend 2 hours focusing and doing what you need to do when you're on the phone. I think I hear Doug.
There he is.
Francis.
Welcome, Doug.
Yes, I'm here. I'm just having a little difficulty trying to get a hold of the sound.
It's okay. You're on now, buddy. How are you?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
Great. Doug, just get a little closer to your phone so we can hear you. We don't have a video of you right now.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, you're right near your phone now?
Well, I'm as close. You know, it's like I said, I can't get the speaker mechanism to work on this.
Yeah, we're not hearing you well.
Okay, yeah, I've just turned up the volume as loud as I can.
I was just bragging about you, Doug. I was calling you a heat-seeking missile.
Don't go too far.
It's amazing. Doug, after 30 years, still has so many fans that fall all over him like a rock star when he comes around. And Doug is completely unfazed by that. He just treats everybody with such dignity and such kindness and just is so present with everybody. I enjoy watching him interact. And he just made such an impact as one of the top 100 Chicago Bears of all time. And as I said earlier before Doug came on, what a businessman. Just such a great person for watching trends to see what's going to happen when. And just like following that offensive back with the ball and keeping your eye on that. That's the way Doug works with trends. And he's done remarkably well as a businessman, not just a great football player, but a great businessman. And so Doug, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about your background, how you started, what your focusing, commitment was early on before you became, a pro football player, how you got into college and who you met in college, and who some of your roommates were on the road, because all of that stuff's really interesting.
You know what? I didn't live a life any different than anybody else. Most of us are not gifted at birth with resources, money, fame, fortune, and it's something that you have to work for. And I think it's a learning process. And I started learning that process early in life. Instead of realizing what I wanted to do in life, I found out what I didn't want to do. And so growing up in a town of 3,500 people in Western Pennsylvania was it was very challenging because there was really not a lot of the success stories. Most people worked in factories and they were manual labor. So there wasn't one person to look at and say, wow, that person's special. So going through at least my days in high school, I always dreamed of trying to become somebody else. My father worked in a factory, and I just tried to figure out what I could do to get out of the circumstance that I was in. And so what I did was I played sports, and my senior year, going into my senior year, I started writing letters to coaches in the area that I lived, Kentucky, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and mostly to Penn State. Joe Paterno was the head coach. and he was a legend in Pennsylvania. So I wrote probably 10 letters to him over the season. You know, we had 10 games. So after each game, I really did a synopsis of what I did. And at the end, like the last 2 paragraphs were like a love letter. Please, please, please recruit me to go to Penn State. I will do anything you ask. I will work hard. I will get up early. I will make mistakes and learn from my mistakes. All those sort of things, 10 weeks in a row. And I felt like, you know, similar to Christmas, you know, when you write that letter to Santa Claus and put it in the mailbox, you don't know if it's ever going to arrive. But to my surprise, after the season was over, those letters did arrive. And I actually had a visit by Joe Paterno at my high school. And he just showed up right in the middle of a class, middle of a day of school, and said, Doug, I don't do this very often. He said, in fact, I've never done it. But these letters were so impactful and so emotional that I felt like I needed to find out who wrote them. And this whole thing took maybe 30 minutes. He said, Doug, I can't recruit you to Penn State. We've already identified and recruited players. But if there's anything I can do for you, please let me know. And I just asked him a simple question. And I said, could you please just say you had an interest in Doug playing? Not that you were recruiting me, not that you were going to do anything else for me, other than you just had an interest. And the next week, what happened is, you think back years ago, back in the 70s, you know, everything was in newspapers then. There was no media. There was no internet. And this was an article that was put in the Pittsburgh Press, the Pittsburgh paper, about Joe Paterno coming and visiting Doug Plank at Norman High School. And in less than 24 hours, the phone started ringing from local schools. And one of those schools was Ohio State. And it was the coach, Woody Hayes. And he said, Doug, we'd like to visit you next week. Would that be okay? And I said, absolutely, coach. So he came the next week and said, would really like you to come to Ohio State and visit the campus and see if this might be a good fit. And I said, you know, coach, I'm not hard to get. I said, next week will be fine. And I'll probably sign a letter of intent right after that. And that's exactly what I did. I went to Columbus, Ohio, which was 4 hours away driving the next weekend, visited Ohio State. They were willing to give me a full ride scholarship. And so that was the beginning. And you would say, okay, that was probably the beginning of your success. Well, it really wasn't. Yes, I signed a letter to go to Ohio State, but when I got into Ohio State, I realized freshmen at that time, this was the last year, freshmen were not eligible to play in varsity football. So, and I had never been on AstroTurf before. I found out that, you know, Ohio State had just put this turf in. And the early AstroTurf versions were like something that you can't imagine. A very short pile, almost like a carpeting in your house, your mother's house. You know, very low pile that you could not, the traction was incredible. And in 30 minutes of practicing on AstroTurf, I managed to tear 2 ligaments, my ACL and MCL, and my cartilage in my right knee. So I had surgery shortly after that. And so my freshman year was done. And so I came back my sophomore year, but I was behind great players at Ohio State. And I really never got what I felt like was a real chance. So for the most part, I played 5 games at Ohio State in 3 years. There were many games I never even got into the game. My last game at Ohio State was a Rose Bowl against USC. I never was in the game. I walked off the field that day thinking that was it. I'm done. I'm never going to play football again in my life. But I found out that come the day of the draft, I get a call from the Chicago Bears. And the Chicago Bears came to one game that I played in. It was one of the 5 games that I played against Evanston at Northwestern. And I had the game of my life. I had interceptions, forced fumbles, recovered fumbles, tackles. I made all the kickoff tackles. I was voted the most valuable player that week by the other players. And my name went up in a board in the locker room. And I was very proud of that. But it didn't help me because the next week I was back on the bench. And how do you go from being the most valuable player in a game to sitting on the bench the next week? And that was pretty much the rest of the year for me there. You know, I rode on the bench and all the way through the Rose Bowl and shocked, as I said, to find out I was by the Chicago Bears. but I realized this was a short career. And, you know, I don't want to say pro sports are a part-time job, but they're a part-life job. You realize that this is going to be a small part of your life, mostly like going to school, going to high school, going to college. There was going to be a beginning and an end. And in fact, you know, the average career in the National Football League is less than 4 years. So why would you not think that you are going to be done and there's something else that you need to do? So when I got to Chicago and I was a 12th round draft pick, 291 players had been picked before me. What inclination would I have had that I thought I was going to make the Chicago Bears? None, zero. You know, I'm the 12th round draft pick. There's only, you know, how many guys, you know, don't even get drafted. But when I got there, I said, you know what, I'm not saying I'm going to make this team, but I was talking to myself. I do a lot of self conversations. I don't know how you guys feel about that. I don't know if I'm off the rocker or I have mental issues or vacuums, but I have conversations with myself all the time. And sometimes my wife is, who are you talking to, Doug? And I said, I'm talking to myself. And I'm just giving myself little pep talks, little moments of inspiration. Because when you go into a hostile environment like sales, like business, like in the fast food business especially. I was in Burger King for 20 years. There was nothing fun about the job. You had to hope that your employees showed up every day. You hope that they, you know, didn't do something foolish like, you know, have something drop on the floor like one of the utensils, you know, from a cleanliness standpoint, or, you know, that they washed their hands and they did all of these other sort of things. And it was constant. And the same thing with pro sports. There was no guarantee contracts when I played. So every single year, no matter who you were, including Walter Payton, the star of our team, he had to make the team each year. So there was no guarantees. And even if you got hurt early in the year, you won't even get the rest of your money. You know, you only received what you earned. And so you talk about thin ice. That was thin ice. But one thing I learned, in the off season, I went and did other jobs in Chicago, and there was plenty of jobs. I sold water softeners. I was a real estate broker. I sold securities, investment securities. I did a whole bunch of things. You know, one thing I learned too, in life, you learn lessons really quickly. Why do you need to go through 4 years to figure out you don't want to be a lawyer or you want to be an engineer? Or there's so many classes out there that you can get a license in 30 to 90 days and you can be selling something or representing a company. Why wouldn't I had licenses all over my wall when I played football? People would say, why are you having all these licenses, Doug? Because in the off season, that is my really work period. That's when I bear down and I really get serious about my career, because that's what I'm going to be doing the rest of my life. In fact, how I became a Burger King franchisee was I was asked to go sign autographs for $500 for 2 hours at a Burger King restaurant. And I found out who the owner was, and I had a discussion with him afterwards and asked him how he got involved in the business. He was waiting to tell somebody that story, and I was that guy. And afterwards, he gave me a business card and said, Doug, please call this guy, see if it can work out for you. In less than 2 days, I was scheduled to go to Detroit, Michigan and work in a Burger King for a week in the drive-thru. Now, I'm a professional football player. How many professional football players are going to go to their local Burger King, Wendy's, McDonald's, and work in a drive-thru and see if this is something they wanted to do? Well, that's what I did, and I got approved as a Burger King franchisee. So I knew the moment my career ended with the Bears, I was going to be in the Burger King business shortly afterwards. And in fact, it was 30 days after my career was done playing football, I was already in Columbus, Ohio, selling hamburgers. And so I think, you know, we always have to look ahead. You know, I think these volatile times right now that we are in require some special skills, contact skills, being in touch with people. You know, every day I go through all my contacts, people that I know, people that I played with, people that I knew as young kids, as a young man. And I touch base with those people, and I keep in touch, and I send them messages, and I don't have to remember their birthdays because my phone remembers their birthdays. And so all I have to do is follow this on screen here. I say it's a screen to success. But if I do something every day, I find myself enjoying life. I like paying back. I like telling people that they were something special in my life, and then thanking them for their time or their effort or words of encouragement that they had. And I try to pass that along myself. And, you know, when you start having great things happen to you like that, it's not work. It's a pleasure. You actually look forward to it. And so every chance I get, whether when I was coaching, you know, I ran Burger Kings, and I coached for 10 years in college at Ohio State, in the National Football League with the Jets and the Atlanta Falcons. And, you know, you start learning about what it's like for those people also to be on the bubble every single day. When they come into work, think about this. You have no guarantee that the coach won't take you aside and say, son, we've come to a decision and you're not involved in it. So goodbye. There's going to be a police officer come by here in about 30 seconds, and he's going to escort you out of the building.
Wow.
Wonderful.
Wow.
A wonderful way to end your relationship with a sports team. You know, being escorted out to your vehicle in the parking lot by a police officer or some other employee of the organization. And that's the same way it is playing. I went in there one day, and this was the off season, and I was called on a Friday night about 9 o'clock. And the general manager, who is the boss of the boss, he's the boss of the head coach, all the coaches. And he said, Doug, I want to talk to you right now. I go, at 9:30 on Friday night, you know, in the off season, you know, in February, March, it's cold in Chicago. I mean, I'd have to go, I don't know, 20 miles through snow and cold weather to get up there and talk to him. And I said, couldn't this wait until Monday? And he said, no, we're going to let you go. And we are going to terminate our relationship with you. And, you know, if I felt like I was just somebody that just was there for a year or two and played special teams, okay, I can understand that. To have my departure discussion Friday night at 9 o'clock. But you know what? I had spent 8 years with the team. I was the person they named this 46 defense after. I was number 46. This is the defense they used to go to the Super Bowl. It didn't matter. It didn't matter. When your time is up, it's up. And, you know, they have no further use for you. And this is true of not just sports teams. This is true in business also. Because I've been involved in many situations in business where, and sometimes it's warranted. If somebody's doing something against the rules and really putting your company in bad shape or a bad perspective, then obviously they need to go. I mean, when I was a coach, I had playbooks. At the end of the playbook, I would draft a letter, and it basically said, thank you for being on this football team. I want you to know there are rules and regulations we must follow, because many times the owners of these teams are either college, universities, or NFL teams. And if you do anything, this is especially true in arena football, if you do anything to violate these rules, then there is no 3 strikes and you're out. You're gone. See you later. Thank you. I'm sorry it didn't work out. There's something magical about having somebody on your team that breaks one of those rules very flagrantly. You go over to their space and you clean out their space. This is true in sports now. All their space, all their shoes, all their clothing, whatever else they have, their personal items, it goes in a box. And they don't even come back to the facility anymore. You don't want them around anybody that's working with you or for you, because they are toxic. They are going to spread a terrible message. So I just tell them, please give me an address and I'll send you your belongings. Now, when the other players and coaches come and see that the locker is empty and that player will never come back here again, I'll tell you what, it lights a fire under everybody's butt. And you talk about getting back in line, doing the little things, because after all, I truly believe whether it's sports or business or life, the little things make a difference. The last 3 days, I have not been very nice to my wife, and we're living in another home right now because our hot water tank exploded and all of our wooden floors in 3,300 square feet of a house were ruined. And the company doesn't make that wood anymore. So the entire house had to be removed. And with that went the wood trim. We had mold inside the walls because, you know, we were not at home when the hot water tank broke, and it literally saturated half of our house. So I'm out living somewhere else right now, and all I'm saying is the little things matter. What you think is insignificant and immaterial is really a big part of success for sports or businesses. And I'm very happy that I was a coach, because you know what? You are a coach as a father, as a sports coach, as a person in business. You're coaching all these people that work at your company or work for you, especially if they're in your organization. And the one thing that I always felt great about was being asked to walk up in front of our team and receive some sort of reward. Now, with the Chicago Bears, this goes to show you how simple that it was. The Chicago Bears had a event which they called the big hit of the game. The big hit could be on offense, could be on defense, could be on special teams, so that everybody on the team participated. So whether they were on the punt team, kickoff team, defense, offense, they had a chance of hitting somebody and getting the hit of the game. Guys, they also gave them $100. I'll tell you that. $100 plus this other item, which was an igloo cooler. Now, I don't want to say $100 because people say, well, that's a bounty. You know, you're paying somebody a bounty for going out and get the hit of the game. It wasn't the latest hit of the game. It wasn't the dirtiest hit. It was a legal hit, which you're allowed to do all the time in football. During the game, there were players running around on the field in the middle of the National Football League game, jumping up and down, saying, I just think I just got the hit of the game. Now, you would think, come on, this doesn't really happen. These are professionals. They're making hundreds and millions of dollars. No, it's the recognition. And on Monday morning when the team met, if we won, only if we won, would you get the igloo cooler and the $100. And to walk up in front of everybody on your team, I remember every time I won it, because you know what? That was burnt into my mind. And here's my point. Why can't we do this as a recognition to people that are in our organization, our company, you know, our association? You can. And the more you do it, the better off it is. You know, I loved meeting because I felt like if we meet enough times, I always felt bad when I was a head coach and I had to cut a player. And one of the responses many times were, Coach, you never told me about that. I didn't know that's the way you felt. I didn't realize, you know, that you wanted me to do it this way. That's why we met every week. Now, it doesn't have to be in person, as we all know right now, just like as we're doing here. It can be done over the phone, over any media line. But that connection makes a huge difference. And I'll tell you one thing right now. Football would be a different sport if not after each play the players ran to a huddle. Why do they run to a huddle? Well, they go to get another play, okay? But, you know, we've already memorized all of our plays. All of our plays, we don't have iPhones out on the field. But you know what? We can work our hands and our manipulation, and our defenses and offenses weren't that intricate. We literally reduced everything into hand signals. I could talk to anybody on my team using my two hands, whether I was angry, whether I was mad, whether we were going to play zone, man-to-man coverage, all those things, just by simple hand signals. There's a whole dialogue. There's a whole language that we know. So my point is, when you get people together and you speak to them verbally, and also the messages that we send out with our body language is powerful. It's unbelievable. It's powerful. I always loved trying to take somebody to the place where I complimented them, but it wasn't just a compliment like, hey, good job, see you later. You know, anybody can do that. How about saying something about his mom or his dad or where he was born you know, and some story could be anything about his hometown or his high school, or you could just go in and just find out a little bit of information about that person. And then you're thanking them for being part of your organization and complimenting them on what they've done. And then you put the cherry on top by saying, and I know back at Norman High School, they'd be very proud of you right now. You know what? When it brings tears to people's eyes, you know what? I was always labeled this tough, rough football player. I don't care. I'm as sensitive as anybody else. And when somebody reaches out and can touch somebody else's heart, wow! There was a player at Ohio State. Francis?
Yeah, right here.
Okay. So anyway, if at Ohio State, I was coaching there was a kid on the team that was exactly like I was. He played just special teams. In fact, he was on the kickoff team. And so he really never got a chance to play much. He was always running down on special teams and doing things like that. And but he was still a very good player. Francis, you still there?
I'm right here, Doug.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure because my screen is going crazy.
It's no problem.
So anyway,
no problem.
He was telling me that he was thinking about quitting Ohio State and going to a smaller school. And in business terms, it's almost like saying, hey, listen, I'd like to leave this job that I am right now where, you know, I've got all these responsibilities, and I'd like to become somebody less, you know, somebody less important with less responsibilities, all those sort of things. But that wasn't this kid. He was a walk-on, which meant he had no scholarship at Ohio State. He was going on just for the love of the sport, and he was on that football team. So nobody was paying his books or his education. He was simply going out and doing this thing all by himself. And he was thinking about going to a smaller school because he wasn't playing on Ohio State's team. He only ran down on kickoffs. And, you know, he was telling me this, and I said, you know what? You're absolutely right. I said, but do you think your life is going to end in another year or 2 years when you're done from Ohio State? And he said, no, I don't think so. And I said, don't you think there's other teams? I just came from the Falcons. They have 32 scouts watching college football, looking for players. So I convinced him to stay at Ohio State, even though he was just on a kickoff team. I said, there's somebody watching you. There's somebody watching what you're doing. So he stayed in Ohio State 2 years. You know, the 1 year I was there, and then he stayed there the next year. After the season was over, the draft came, and he was drafted by the New England Patriots.
Oh, my gosh.
He's still on the New England Patriots. That was 9 years ago.
Wow.
He has 3 Super Bowl rings. And I was at an Ohio State event, and I was talking to someone, and someone came up behind me and grabbed me behind me, and I couldn't turn around. And I finally turned around, and there was this guy. It was this guy that I told to stay at Ohio State, finish up his school, and good things are going to happen to him. He said, Coach, I don't know where to start. He said, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. He said, if you weren't in my life at that time, my life would be so different. And he said, you know, I met my wife as a result of that experience, and it was an occupation for me and still is, and it's totally changed my life. And then he turned around and walked away. I don't mind telling you, tears were rolling down my face because this had nothing to do with football. It was all about a personal relationship with someone that you could give some guidance to, some inspiration, and give him some direction in saying, hey, listen, whatever you think the situation is right now, it's not going to stay like that very long. And the choice that he made is one that's going to have incredible impact on his life. And, I mean, to play in the National Football League and to do the things that he's done over the last 9 years is quite amazing.
Doug, that is such an incredible story. But, I mean, you and I in the last couple of years have developed such a great friendship. It's such an honor to be a friend of yours. And you know, the stories that we share on the phone, your stuff is just so mind-boggling. And like I was saying earlier before you came on, unless somebody asks you, you don't even share about all your successes and all your accolades. I mean, you're just a remarkable fella, and you're a remarkable fella from the heart, which is more important than anything. So it's been a very, in fact, folks, I met Doug about 2 or 3 weeks before I had my massive heart issue. And, you know, it was a very, very interesting time in my life. But Doug is an inspiration for everybody. He really is. Anytime you're around him, he's going to uplift you. He's going to make you feel good about yourself. And he's a remarkable guy. Doug, talk a little bit about your book, please.
Okay, you know, I never really ever thought about writing a book, but I just felt like, you know, when I did, I saw some movies on television, some people, stories about their life, and after watching a few of those movies, I just, it just dawned on me, I think I have even more to say than that person that I just watched on the screen. And although that was a great movie and I really enjoyed it, I think people need to hear, because I think this is the number one malady of our life, is that we get beat down and we lose, and we lose a battle, and we get discouraged and disappointed. And now all of a sudden that ulterior self deep inside us starts talking to us. You're not strong enough. You're not as good of a speaker. You don't know people very well. You're not very gifted athletically or physically, you know, being taller and stronger and more beautiful and all those sort of things. Like, as I said earlier, I have conversations every day with myself. I was on a deep conversation before this phone call started, and it was about what I was going to do to try to get back on track in spite of the pandemic that we're going through right now, because we've all had changes in our life since then. You know, we've all been impacted. There's less meetings, there's less speaking time, interaction. You know, what can I do? Even someone that seems like way out on the fringe of what your friendship or your interaction might be, what is wrong with giving them a call and just letting them know that, you know, I've spoke with people, politicians. I don't want to say who, because everybody has their favorite politician, but it just amazes me that to start a discussion like, I want to talk to that person. So I call, and maybe they're, you know, they're part of their business for, you know, rejoining either the Senate or the House of Representatives or whatever the case might be, their campaign. But, you know, it gets more personal. And you leave a couple phone calls to have these people call you back. I mean, again, now, this is not any particular denomination as far as Republican, Democrat, you know, whatever the case might be. It's just talking with people and hearing what they've got to say about current state of affairs, what our world is, you know, whether it could be a governor, it could be a senator out of your state. And, you know, you start giving opinions and you find out some of these people are very sincere and very gifted at what they're doing. In other cases, I have to say I've been very disappointed by some of the elected representatives I talked to, that I didn't feel like they were in the interest of the people that are in this country or in this state. And I was a little disappointed because, you know, I've been around great coaches. And, you know, like, as I said, everybody in life is a coach. Parents are coaches. Your school teachers are coaches. And, you know, it's messages that they give you. And I'll say this, the greatest coaches I've had, they didn't know the most. They weren't the most intelligent. They were intelligent, but they weren't like a professor of tackling or blocking or anything like that. I'll tell you why they were good coaches and good administrators. They had the ability to reach out with their voice and actions and touch you in your heart and make you do whatever they wanted you to do. I mean, there were coaches that after they got done talking, there was just silence in the room. And you heard grown men crying and whimpering in a NFL locker room. I mean, the emotion of it right now, thinking about it even happening years ago, you get to a point where it's not about words. It's not about getting instructions. It's about touching somebody's inner self and saying, we're going to do this. And we're not going to do it individually. We're all going to do it together. And I wish sometimes our politicians had more abilities and skills to touch our populace like that, instead of the constant barrage of attack against each other, because it doesn't make for a very good team. And if I would be on a football team, basketball, baseball team, that the coaches were like throwing comments and attacks against each other, that team would fail. They would be at the bottom of the list. And unfortunately, that's where we are right now. And it's too bad it's an example to too many of our young people to see such chaos and look at the adults and say, those are adults. Those are the people that are leading our country. Those are the people that I'm maybe trying to become, maybe by getting a law degree or whatever the case might be. It's hurtful. And I just think that they're doing such a disservice to not only younger people, but I think even people that have grown up, because, don't you feel better about yourself when everything seems to be going good, especially not only for the company that you're going in right now. I'm trying to make decisions right now myself because, so many of the things that I had success in were buildings that were built, like fast food buildings. And fast food buildings have been getting burnt down the last few months. And, I was a franchisee of one of those concepts, Wendy's. And, there's been some terrible things happen at Wendy's by accident. And all of a sudden the building's burnt down for really no reason at all. And, it's situations like that really just, we ask ourselves, are we headed in the right direction? Are we in a point right now where we're better than we were before? And unfortunately, too many times in situations like that, we just have to say no.
It's a very good point, Doug. Before you got on, I told the folks on the call how you and I will talk about what the real future is, that what was doesn't work anymore. And that we got to look towards a new future. What's the new creativity? What's the new potentials and possibilities? And those are always calls I really enjoy with you, because we get to noodle a little bit, back and forth. But I will say this, we are in a very confused time, and what you've suggested is very important, and that is to reach out to your team and encourage them and appreciate them and love them. And I call myself a benevolent interrupter. And so I call people up with encouragement, good news, positive things, because all they're doing right now is being barraged with negative. And they're getting a lot of misinformation. And to reach out and talk to somebody and give them some hope and give them some direction, it's exactly the right thing to do. And it's not trending. It's just the way people operate. Everybody wants something positive in their life. And if you can help provide that, that's why you've been such a spectacular coach and such a great businessman, Doug, because, every time we get off the phone, I really feel better. I feel like there's more of a future out there with movers and shakers like you. Because if I watch the news, and I watch social media, what they're doing is letting me know how terrible things are. And then you and I get off the phone and it's like, no, they're not that terrible. There's actually a lot of good things. There's a lot of, light at the end of the tunnel. And Anyway, do you have time to open up for a few questions, Doug? Would that be okay? Could some of the people ask you some
Yeah, I
questions?
sure do. Absolutely. I mean, you know what? If I love question and answers because I could stand up here and same thing with you, Francis. We could talk for an hour, but we could never, ever maybe talk about the topic that is so special to someone else, that's something that they really need. And I'm no expert. You know, I've done a lot of different things. You know, I've been a coach. Like I said, I sold real estate. I've been a contractor. I built buildings. I used to build the fast food buildings that I was involved in. I was a loan originator. I went out and got the financing. I was a real estate broker. I found the land. And all I'm saying is all these conversations with myself, it was constantly trying to drive myself to bigger and better things. And it's like when I was working out, when I was a football player, and I would get to the end of the workout and I was tired and I said, I'm done, you know, this is over. No, that's what everybody else does. I want to stick around another 30 minutes and start figuring out things, why I could do things extra special, whether it was strength building or confidence. And what I did was when I was lifting weights, I started imagining myself being out on a football field. And those weights that I had in my hand right now, those weren't barbells. Those were somebody's ankles or their hips or their arms. So when I was grabbing these things, they weren't dumbbells. They were some part of another human being. And I would say, I am not letting go. I don't care, 10, 20 reps, 30 reps. This is the end of the game. This is when everybody gives up. This is when they let go. No, I'm not going to let go. I'm holding on for my dear life. And I remember sometimes watching, you know, even with the Chicago Bears, I'm not saying I stopped everybody. I didn't. But some of those guys, I held on to them, their ankles or something, ball carriers, and they drug me 5 or 6 yards into the end zone. But I wasn't going to let go. There's no way. I was going to hold on to this guy as long as I could until somebody else arrived. But, you know, it's imagining, instead of just doing the job that's in front of you right now, change it a little bit. Make believe. You know, then, you know what? You can have incredible effort. You know, every practice I used to dream like this was a game, that I really was in a game. So if the play was on the other side of the field, even in practice, I would run all the way over to the other side of the field and touch the guy afterwards. After he went out of bounds or whatever. Now you would say, coaches go, why did you do that? Why did you run all over there? I said, because in a game, I don't even have to think about it. When I get down to selling somebody something or presenting something, and I've done it over and over again, it's getting on a bicycle and you're riding a bike and you don't even have to think about it.
That's exactly right, Doug. And I've said this over and over again. You're an actor out there. When you're presenting something, you're an actor. You got to do the script over and over and over in your mind so it comes out easily and elegantly. And that's true. So I'm going to freak the callers out a little bit. Doug, how old are you now?
I'm 66. And
okay,
I can't
Doug.
believe I'm already – life has gone by that fast. I mean, you think back when you were just a teenager in 60s and 70s. I remember seeing people that were like that age and thinking, oh, my gosh, too bad. He's going to die. He's old. He can't walk. He's limping. You know, I haven't had it easy either. And you know this, Francis. I've had 4 joints replaced. I have titanium in both my shoulders and both my knees. And I've had 32 concussions where I either didn't know who I was or know where I was. That's how, you know, you have this concussion.
You could have been a politician.
You don't know where you are, and you don't know who you are.
That makes you a politician then. That means you could be a career politician. So, Doug, I'm going to ask you 2 more questions because I want to freak these listeners out. So you're 66. How much do you weigh now?
I weigh 205 pounds.
Okay. Doug, how much do you bench press?
I can still bench press 400 pounds.
300 pounds.
That's hard to do. It's hard to do with artificial shoulders. And, you know, the one thing I've been giving you know, titanium rubs up against your other bones because those have been inserted now into your shoulders and knees. And titanium doesn't reduce itself. It reduces the bones it's rubbing up against. And my last examination for my 2 knees, the doctors just said, Doug, please take it easier on your workouts because you've already destroyed a half an inch of your bone by having it rubbed into disintegrated by the titanium.
Doug, you're the epitome of mind over matter. And I want to make sure before this call ends, how these folks can get your book, because it's, you know, when a car rolls over 5 times and you come out, and you come out without a scratch, that's a mind blower. That's a mind blower. So, Katrina, why don't we open this up to some questions from the folks, because this is a big deal. To get to meet Doug Plank's a big deal.
Francis, I don't want to interrupt you, but please just get everybody's information. Just send me one text. I'll be happy to send my book out to you for no charge. Being part of this thing today.
Man,
So,
you're
you know,
Doug,
I'll be happy to do that for you. So,
Doug,
you know how to get a hold of me. Just please forward me that information. I'll be glad to do that.
Doug, you're just such a remarkable guy, man. I tell you, I'm so, like I said earlier, I'm proud to have you as a friend. And, you know, I'm like a piece of gum. You're never going to get rid of me. I'll be your friend forever. So anyway, let's see. That's a very sweet offer. And we'll make sure that everybody gets their information to you. Katrina, why don't you open up the possibilities and see if anybody has a question for Doug Plank.
All right. Well, go ahead and unmute yourself if you have a question. And Doug, thank you so much for today's talk. That was very inspiring. It's amazing
Wow. Wow.
to hear what you've lived through and what you've done with your life. It's really fantastic.
It's just the beginning for Doug. Wait till you see what he's going to do in the next 10 years.
Yeah, exactly. Or 30. Wow.
Well, thank you.
Anybody got questions for Doug?
So while somebody's thinking about their question, Doug, what would you recommend to someone who is just getting started, reaching out to people, getting the courage up to make those phone calls? What would you recommend? Maybe a mindset tip or even an action that works, that has worked for you and other people you know?
Well, I want you to know we're all ridiculously terrible when we start at anything. You know, walking. How about that? How about when we all started walking? How about that, diving into the carpet and falling down? And I really feel like I like failing. You know, come on. I'm like, you can always recover. Some of my best success stories are after I dropped the ball and I failed with someone. So a certain amount of time would go by. I've got that person's phone number and their name and their email address and where they live. You think they're going to get something from me down the road? Yeah, they sure are. And down the road, I mean, like 1 day, 1 week, 1 year, 1 month, whatever it is. I reconnected with people after years of a failed business deal, or we have a discussion about moving forward on something that it never materialized. But I never let that go. I mean, I continually always kept it alive. And years afterwards, something else came up. Maybe it was different than what we initially talked about. But then we became partners and we got together and we did something together. You know, I don't look at people as, I say, you know, this person in the room has something good about them. Sometimes it's really hard to find that good thing, but they're skilled in something. You know, we're all good at one thing and bad at another. So maybe something that comes up it might be good for that person in terms of their ability to speak or their interaction or whatever. You know, I find this all the time with like fellow athletes, especially the ones that are still playing. They're so egotistical. They're so wealthy. They have all the money in the world. You know, people say, Doug, please get me in contact with this person, this, and this. They just mentioned 5 millionaires that are now playing sports, baseball, basketball, football. I don't really know any soccer players, but I do know football, baseball, basketball players. Their motivation to do anything off the field, now especially because they're so wealthy, is so low. Now, what do I do with those people? They're still valuable. What about if, let's say I open a restaurant somewhere. I didn't want them working in the restaurant, but then they could be there for the opening. They could talk to people. I try to use people for what their skill level is. Are they social people? Can they talk to other individuals? Maybe not necessarily about recruiting them for the effort that you're going into. But you know what? Is everybody impacted by, hey, listen, I either signed up or I didn't sign up right? What if you went to an event and you had somebody there that was a local, it wouldn't even have to be an athlete. It could be a politician, it could be anything. Somebody that's just kind of out of the box, and he could give a talk. And it might not even be about your company, but just your group was there, and they're wondering sometimes going, wonder why our leader brought that person in to talk to us because he had nothing to do with the business that we were doing. No, but yet he made a point. When I was a head coach, do you think I brought in every time I had a speaker come in, it was a head coach? No. I would bring in people that sacrificed for themselves and for our country. And one of the favorite targets of doing that are bringing people in that have served in our armed forces and have an arm missing, or come in a wheelchair, or have no legs. Whatever they say in front of this group of players, people, it doesn't have to be any organization. You can't not help but be impacted and say, listen, here's what this guy did. He had his limb blown off, arm, whatever. He came back and, he's got another arm on there now that's artificial, and he can do this, and he can work, and he can do all these sort of things. And his story is so compelling that at the end of it, I know these people are in a certain business. It doesn't matter. Their thoughts of you for just putting them in that situation where they can hear their stories, it makes yours shrink into nothing. You start thinking, I'm feeling sorry for myself. I've got to make a phone call, or I've got to go meet somebody. How about getting your arm blown off? Or crawling a half a mile back to your other soldiers, and just incredible sacrifice. Personal stories about people putting themselves in harm's way to save somebody else. It's like, to me, I don't know, I never forget those stories. And you know what? And when I really feel sorry for myself, I go back to thinking of those stories and those memories. I'll tell you what, I stop feeling sorry for myself real fast and say, Doug, man, you've only just begun, and that's why I tell Francis this right now. People said, geez, Doug, you were a football coach, you were a football player, you own these businesses. I know, and it's just the beginning. I mean, why? I feel sorry for people that get to my stage of life and say, geez, it's been a terrible life, and I've had to work hard all the time, and when I grew up, this is what the typical story was. People worked in factories and things like that for years and years and years, and then they got their gold ring or whatever it was, or pen at some situation, and then they were going to go take it easy the rest of their life and sit and drink alcoholic beverages and do other things that were very good for their body. And no, I mean, I read all these stories, like Dave Thomas, how late Kentucky Fried Chicken, Colonel Sanders. I'm just saying these because these are fast food stories. These guys became monsters of effort and accomplishment at 50, 60 years old. You go, hey, if they can do it, I can do it. And, Dave Thomas was an orphan himself and became one of the largest donors to orphanages in our country, which nobody really realizes. And, Colonel Sanders, honestly, he speaks for himself. It's never over. It's never over. And the other thing that I really like to do is, and I can tell you guys this because I know you're a motivated group. I don't spend time around people that are real toxic, that everything is negative. And, I think I look at negativity sometimes as just a motivation I like to fail because I know how it felt to fail. I cried many times in my life when I failed on the field, off the field, whether I failed in a relationship with, not husband and wife, but friends, just friends for life. And you just didn't do the right thing, at the right time. And I always try to go back and fix those things. And I can't tell you how many times people really break down on the other end of the telephone and say, Doug, I'm so sorry for the way I acted or treated you or said or something like that. And I know that you knew that I did you wrong, but you never let me know. And you treated me the same as always. And I want to thank you for that. And does it get any better than that? I mean, here's somebody that did you something that no one would want to do to another person. I'm not saying physically, but just business-wise, decision-wise. And, if you can be the bigger person, life it doesn't come and go in a couple of weeks or a month. It's a long run. So I look at it that way. I guess you could always look at something like, I'm going to set out to be wealthy and famous in 5 years or 10 years. I guess you could do that. That you're going to crush a lot of people probably along the way. Instead of building friendships and relationships, a lot of times, like in the sports world, it's you eat your own. What do I mean by that? It doesn't matter who's on your team. If he can be cut from the team or hurt or injured so you can do better, then it's okay. It's like the story about the guy sitting on the bench and somebody in front of him getting hurt. Now, did I feel bad when I was in football at Ohio State and I'm on the bench? Did I really feel bad when somebody in front of me got hurt so I could be on the field in front of 100,000 people on national television playing football? I felt bad for the person, but I felt happy for me because it was an opportunity. But I also knew that even though I was this backup person, if I didn't work every single day on getting better and improving my skills, then when my time came and my opportunity was there, I would never perform. I would fall flat on my face. So when I was a backup, and people would be asking me, Doug, why don't you lift the weights after hours? Why are you staying on the field backpedaling and practice catching and tackling? You know what? My day, there's a song I grew up, My Day Will Come. I can't remember who sang it, but that little song used to go off in my brain. My day will come. And sure enough, it came. And you know what? If you weren't ready and prepared and energized and all those sort of things, when it comes, you're going to fail because your time came. And here's the other thing in closing, just not for today, but just on this topic. There are a couple things in life that you can be really regretful on. And I regret the things that I failed on. There aren't many in sports, but there's certain things in business. Nobody knows, really, my friends know that I tried to start a Mexican restaurant when I first moved to Arizona back in 1989. And it was a concept called Taco Cabana. It was open 24 hours. And it served, 99-cent margaritas, and all these other sort of Mexican dishes. But you know what? I learned one thing. I just moved from Ohio, where I sold the Burger Kings. The state of Arizona did not need another Mexican restaurant with somebody from Ohio making the menu and running it. And within 6 months, I failed and that restaurant closed. And I don't mind telling you, I lost hundreds of thousands, not a couple $100,000 in 6 months. Now, you think you're a success, but
Excuse me, Doug, you got to go closer to your phone because we're not hearing you.
Okay.
There we go.
Any better now, Francis?
Much better, much better.
Okay, sorry about that. My point is, every successful person has times where they are not successful, but they learned from those. And when I opened up these Mexican restaurants, it was only one in Tempe, and I lost over $200,000 in 6 months. And I went home that night after we closed the restaurant that day, and my son was waiting. He goes, "Daddy, I'm glad you're home." And he threw his arms around me, and he was only like 4 or 5 at the time. And I said, I just talk to myself all the time. And I said, "Yeah, it's Mike, you know, as my son's name." I said, "You don't know that I just lost your college tuition today when I closed down this restaurant." And what happened was, it was mostly in the equipment, which I had paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for, and I sold it for 10 cents on the dollar. So the $280,000 of equipment that I purchased 6 months earlier, now I sold it for about $25,000. So I lost, you know, almost $300,000. But I never got down on myself. Yes, I was talking to myself all the time. "What did you do, Doug? How are you going to get out of this?" I never realized that restaurant equipment was so inexpensive after it's been used just once. It could be almost brand new, but the fact that it's been in somebody else's hands, it depreciates by about 90%. In other words, you can buy an entire restaurant package that costs $300,000 in January, and you can buy it for $30,000 in December if the restaurant closes. So here's what I started to do. I was done with the Mexican restaurants, but what I did was I was going back into Burger King, and I started calling all the banks and lending institutions, leasing companies that did business with Burger King. And I asked them, was there any failures in their system? Did anybody open a store and in less than a year close it for whatever reason? Maybe the road was under construction. Maybe McDonald's opened next to them. Whatever it was, it didn't matter. I started getting phone calls from around the country of people wanting to sell restaurant equipment, Burger King restaurant equipment. I would go look at it, and this equipment that cost $300,000 earlier, I was offering $30,000. So I purchased 4 or 5 packages like that. Now, that's a lot of equipment. What do you do with it? I rented a warehouse in Tempe, Arizona, and I put the Burger King equipment in there, and I started selling it to other Burger King franchisees for 50% of the cost. So instead of them paying $300, I charged them $150, and I was only paying $30,000 for it. I was making over $100,000, $200,000 every transaction. In less than a year and a half, I made all my money back from losing it with a Mexican restaurant.
Unbelievable. Absolutely amazing.
So here's what I'm saying. No matter what happens in your life, don't ever let yourself get down, because there's always a way out. And I still buy used restaurant equipment and broker it to other people. The restaurants that I've been after that, the Burger Kings, I would put used restaurant equipment in the restaurant because it saved me money. Now, people say, "Why aren't you a Burger King franchisee anymore?" The company became very mad at me because I was not buying brand new equipment from Burger King. So whatever profit they had in the sale of that equipment, they were now losing. But what I was doing was opening up more and more Burger King restaurants for them, generating more royalty and advertising. So I you know, sometimes in life you can't figure out all the questions and have all the answers, but you must just be in a situation where you just make the best of the situation and move on.
Amazing. Remarkable. Hey, so are there any questions out there for Doug? Because as you can see, he's not just full of experience, he's full of tremendous wisdom as well. And he knows how to figure things out. So do you guys have any questions for Doug before he takes off? Okay. Doug, How do I thank you for this call? This was a wonderful call. And thank you for your generous
Francis,
offer.
you know what? Honestly, I want you to know, I wish I was there with you guys right now, because you would walk up to me and say, I'll tell you the first comment people make when they meet me. Oh my gosh, you're so little. You played in the NFL. Now, I've lost 2 inches. When you start getting new knees and new shoulders, you shrink. And after gravity has you for 66 years, you're getting closer to the ground than the sky. But my point is, I find out that most people are timid, and they're not willing to take that first leap off, not a cliff. You know, it's a step. It's a step to the next step. So people say, oh, it's off a cliff. No, you're not. This is not feast or famine. You're not going to lose everything you've ever had. This is a learning experience. And what I say is, learn as much as you can about what you're doing, and then try to associate yourself with the best, most, motivated, profitable, driven people that you can. Because forget about the business. They may teach you tricks of the trade, but more than anything else, they'll start showing you some of the dynamics in their life that made them successful. And you know what? You don't have to be an inventor. You don't have to be the first guy that ever, did this. This is not the Pilgrims or whatever. I'm best at copying what somebody else does. And then I make a little tweak. And I did this all the time as a coach. Whether I ran offensive plays or defensive, I would see defenses that I really, really like to run. So what I would do is I would adapt them, and then I would put like a person in a little different position. So it wasn't quite the same defense, but in reality it was. But now it was mine. I made it mine. And what I tell everybody is, find someone that you can follow and you can be a follower of. Maybe you could let them know, or not even let them know, and start doing the things that they're doing. Not the big things like signing deals and stuff like that. What motivates these people? Because a lot of times you just have to ask, and if you don't ask, it's like when I tell you that story back in high school. If I didn't ask those coaches, specifically Joe Paterno, to be a part of his team, then he would have never came to my high school. And if he would never have came to my high school, I would have never went to Ohio State. If I would have never went to Ohio State, I would have never been in Evanston playing Northwestern, and a Chicago Bears scout would have been there. And if I hadn't gone to Ohio State, I wouldn't have met my wife right now, 44 years. So
Wow.
Taking chances, smart chances, and doing things that change who you are, there's nothing wrong with that. You're not taking a risk. You're adding value to your existing life, and your confidence level will go way up. You don't think I was scared the first time I ran onto a field in the National Football League? Everybody's taller than me except the punter. And I think, okay, how am I going to do this? Well, after the first game, it became easier and easier and easier. And sooner or later, now all of a sudden, people were looking out for me. They didn't want me to be around them because I was going to hit them or run into them or whatever. But I just tell everybody, don't wait to get started. There's potential out there to do so many great things. But you know what? As I said before, there's 2 things in my life I regret. I regret failing, but I'll tell you what I really regret. I regret the things that I never tried, that I never completed, that I never finished. So don't let that happen to yourself.
So the word inspiration, Doug, it comes from a Greek word, inspiros, which means in spirit, in God. Enthusiasm, enthu means in God. Enthusiasm, inspiration. And you've provided so much of that on this call today, Doug. And man, oh man, I don't even know how to thank you. I'm just so grateful to have you as a friend and noodle information back and forth. And you're just such a bright, humble, down-to-earth, kind man that, I think anybody who comes in contact with you, Doug, is really blessed. And by the way, Northwestern, who you played against, my cousin went to college there, and he went to medical school there. And he's the guy who invented liposuction.
Wow. He's
done pretty good too.
But here's the other thing I find, Francis, by doing good things, and it touches so many people, and it really truly is a small world. Those things that you do good for other people, they pay dividends. And you at the time may think, hey, you're putting in your time or effort or whatever. No, you're investing. You're investing in yourself, and you're investing in somebody else that might come along years later and say, hey, listen, there's certain things in life that we're all touched by, speeches and interactions, and hopefully, I could be part of one of those things in somebody's life and say, yeah, I remember this Doug Plank guy, and he told us never to stop, keep going, and keep making more mistakes, because the more mistakes you make, the smarter you're going to get, and the smarter you're going to get is more successful, and it's going to be easier, to achieve your goals. So it really is. It's not a burden. It's really a benefit.
Doug, spectacular. Thank you so much, buddy. And if there's no other
Francis,
questions.
One more question. Amy wanted to know, Doug, who is your mentor? Who was someone who mentored you that was important to you in your life?
That's a good question.
Doug, speak into your phone, okay?
Okay, I'm sorry. Oh yeah, sorry about that.
It's okay.
I was trying to think in high school. I think I told you my first job was a garbage man at 9 years old, and so that's one thing I learned I didn't want to do. I didn't want to be the garbage man, and I just kept looking around at all these other people that were successful, but I kept doing other jobs. I did landscaping. I was in Western Pennsylvania, so one of the jobs I used to work with a guy. We had a big pickup truck and we'd go get coal, and people had coal. They used coal to heat their houses. And they had a basement where you put the coal. So I guess rather than say one specific person, I would say probably it was more a experience of seeing my father go to work, mostly 7 days a week and work 12 hours a day. And, just the life. I remember two things about my dad: coming home from work and going to work. That's the only thing I remember about him. He was home at very, very seldom. I never remember, catching a ball or anything like that with my dad. It just never happened. He was the worker. He was the worker bee in the family. And all these sort of things, I don't know, maybe there was something inside of me that said, hey, Doug, you don't want to do this. There's other things in there. I'd watch television and I'd see all these wonderful things happening with other people, but not in our area, because no one ever really left. Most people just stuck around. There wasn't, one teacher or anything like that. I guess I was so blessed to have this voice inside of me that used to just keep challenging me all the time. Doug, you can do better. You didn't do it. You didn't work hard enough. You didn't plan hard enough. You should have expected it. And I just remember having this voice inside my entire life talking to me, but not trying to do just terrible things for people, but, to enrich and encourage and make other people feel like, wow, they've really benefited from having an association with you. And, I guess if there was one thing that really motivated me, I'll say this: once I got to Ohio State, the first day when I told you about the two ligaments I tore, man, what a tough start. MCL, ACL, and I'm sitting on the ground with my knees on fire. I don't know what's wrong with it, and a trainer comes over to me and he says, oh, that's nothing. You can practice, get up. You can get up. But I couldn't get up. Here's the other thing. When you tear ligaments, you lose the stability in your foot. And my right foot, I could turn it inside to a 90-degree angle, and I could turn it to the outside to the 90-degree angle. There was nothing holding my knee in place. And the freshman coach came over to me and he said, "What's your name again?" And I said, "Doug Plank." And I'm laying on the AstroTurf now at Ohio State, my first day, less than 30 minutes there. He said, where did you come from, Doug? And I said, Irwin, Pennsylvania. And he looked at me and he goes, "You haven't even been here 30 minutes, and now you're laying on the ground complaining of your knee hurting." He goes, "What do you think the people back in Irwin would say right now with you laying on the ground?" And I mean, these were tough words for someone that's just been there for 30 minutes and now injured sitting on the turf. And he said, "I'd be embarrassed. I'm embarrassed to see you on the ground." And he walked away. This was the coach, the freshman coach. There was something inside of me, a voice that said, "Doug, this is not the end. This is only the beginning. You're going to show him one day that that's exactly the truth. That, you know, you're going to rehab this knee, and you're going to come back, and you're going to come play, and you're going to do great." And that was the voice inside of me. And I guess I was challenged at Ohio State constantly just by being undersized and being a backup player, so that when I had my chances to play, I made the most of them. And you know what? If you give great effort in whatever you're doing, someone's going to notice. You may not think it, and it doesn't have to be physical. It doesn't have to be tackling people and things like that. But when you're giving effort in whatever you're doing, I'm telling you, somebody else notices, and you're going to be rewarded for your efforts. And if it isn't in that particular line of work or career, then, you know, try it with something else. But truly, you know, learn from your mistakes and just keep getting better and better. And, you know, and the other thing, the more things that you try and maybe don't succeed in, it gets easier. You know, it gets easier to overcome failure. And, you know, I never listened to anybody that always told me, "You're terrible, you're too small, you're not big enough." I just said, "Okay, I'll show you." And I used that as motivation, and it took me all the way to where I'm at right now.
Unbelievable. I got to tell you guys, when I first met Doug, we hit it off pretty instantly, and very, very motivational. And we were clowning around. Here we're guys in our 60s clowning around, and you guys know that I'm not a small guy. I'd be small for a football player, but I'm a pretty big at the time, pretty strong, solid guy. And Doug was joking around, and he grabbed me from around the chest, around the back and the chest and the shoulders. And I swear, I thought I was in a steel vise. This guy's in his 60s and put his arms and grabbed me. And I went, "Oh my God, if he's like this in his 60s, I can't even imagine what he was like in his 20s and 30s. So it was a really interesting moment to say, my gosh, this guy is a powerhouse. Unbelievable. Anyway, Doug, thanks for everything. Yeah, we'll give you a little list of the people that were on this call that would love your book.
Great. Yeah, please do. I'd be happy to do that. Thank you.
You're awesome. Thank you so much, buddy, and I'll talk to you soon. Can we all send a thank you to Doug?
Yeah, thank you so much. Let me unmute everybody. Oh, you'll have to unmute yourself.
Okay,
Sorry
thanks.
about that. Anyway, thank you, Doug. It was so inspiring to hear your story.
Thank you.
Listen,
Thank you so
you can
much.
have the same stories. Just get started. Just get started.
Okay,
Can I get an autograph?
we're getting started. All right,
Doug,
thanks everybody
tremendous,
for being
buddy.
on the call.